to the absolute beginner, prototype with Figma Qubit. I am very excited to share with you prototyping, because prototyping, for me at least, this is probably my favorite part, when we start adding these interactions and we start making it like something living and breathing that we can actually, manipulate and believe that it's an app. Let's get started. As with always, we're going to start with some theory. Ooh. We're going to start with some theory, and after that, we are going to move on to a demo that I'll provide for you guys. And then at the end, we'll have some time for Q&A if you guys have any questions. Again, just reinforcement of these ground rules. Participation is expected either in the chat. I see Seth has already started with that. Or if you guys want to ask questions, totally feel free to do so during the event. I'm not the expert, I'm a student just like you guys. I just have a couple of tips and tricks that I'd like to share that I think can help kickstart you in your understanding of Figma. And definitely reach out if you have any questions from us. That's what we're here for. We want to make sure we're good mentors for you in all these different apps and stuff we're teaching you. So without further ado, Aparna, get us started.
Yeah. So last time we talked about a lot of different things. We talked about components, textiles, making auto layouts, and all of those were kind of looking in like design phase. And now we're taking it a step further and trying to, really get into the prototyping part, which sits somewhere during the prototyping stage, which is kind of like right after the design, trying to make your UIs, perfect everything. So kind of recapping what happened last time, we discussed what styles are, and there are two types of styles. One is the text style, and the second is the color styles. And I know we kind of went over this demo for us last time. As you can see, you can click on these 4 little buttons here, and then you can create your text style so that you can make sure your text styles are consistent over in your application. You don't want to have one different type of one semi-bold and then one bold and trying to have to change everything individually. So textile kind of helps you make everything consistent and keep everything in place. And same thing with colors. I know everybody has their brand colors for their UI. So being able to create that color style and then, name it by yourself and changing it helps you keep your design consistent. Talking about consistency, we also have components, and components are a great way to make sure that your UI is very consistent. So, and essentially, like we talked about textiles and color styles, which are some sort of like mechanisms to keep everything consistent, components are for these individual elements that you create within your UI. So it could be the navigation bar that you can see here, some of the buttons, and I know that within components, sometimes buttons can also have different states, like it can be active, or it can be something for like hover, or it can be non-active. And for that, you can use variants. So like Quint showed us in this demo over here, you can create different variants. So over here, he created a variant so that you could see the pill during, before, and after. And you can also see an active and a non-active state. So that helps you create little styles for your individual elements as well. And with these individual elements, if you want to make your design even more powerful, you can use auto layout. And this was a demo that was done by Varun Khatri. And in this demo, he taught us how we can use these individual components, layer them together to make them into separate card formats, and make our design even more powerful. So what it can help you do is make your designs a whole lot more responsive. It'll help you create buttons with different states and variables. And it's just a great way to design. It helps you make everything a lot more easier if you want to change and you want to make sure that these changes are implemented over different types of, different types of devices, whether it be mobile or iPad or computer. And with that, today we want to talk about prototyping. So now you've made your UI, we've understood how to make these design systems, we've created these individual elements. We want to go ahead and make sure that we want to see them in motion. I know that we have a lot of things in prototyping, but today we want to talk about that exact term. What is exactly prototyping within prototyping? And I know this kind of confuses you. So what I mean by that is these smaller interactions. How exactly will one frame interact with these other frames, which means how one of the screens when you click on it, would you drag, would you press on it, would you do a little tap, or all of these different interactions make up your design what they are. And so these interactions can be between two screens or even between two simple components. So these smaller interactions is what Quinn is going to be talking to us today with his demo. And there's a lot of different platforms that help you create these interactions. So you could use Sketch, you could use Figma, you could use Adobe XD, you could use Framer, Studio, and even Principle. But when you look at specifically their level of interactions, something that I want to point out is Adobe XD's potential to do voice-based inputs. So in Figma or in a lot of other platforms, you can maybe use your mouse, or you could use your keyboard, or you could, tap and everything. But Adobe XD allows you to use your voice as an input. So it's really great for those applications when you need the voice to be there. And one good thing about Framer is really cool, by the way, if you want to check it out, is that you can design in Figma and then you can prototype it in Framer. And Framer has a lot more opportunities to prototype as well. So make sure to look at that. And in Vision Studio and Principle, while they might not be that good at looking at when you're trying to make your UI designs and stuff like that, it's actually pretty cool for interaction. So that's something that you could check out well. However, today we were going to look at Figma, which is one of my favorite tools. And so without further ado, we can jump into the demo for today.
Yay. Thank you, Aparna, for that overview. Yeah, we're going to get started with the demo. And again, if you guys have any questions, this is going to be a lot and a lot of fun. So let's get started. If we go into our Figma document, there's one thing we didn't talk about last time, and that is the concept of frames. Frames are up here in the top left corner, and they are most analogous to artboards. If you've ever done artboards in another app before, it's very similar to that. So if I make a frame, you can see I'm making a frame here, and then look at that. That's my frame. It's basically an artboard, or like you can think of it like a visual folder. So if I make a little square here and I bring it into this one, see how it kind of clips there. This square is now part of this frame. So that's all a frame is. And Figma actually does a really good job. Once you select this frame tool here, on the right side, you have all these different presets. So you can see people use it for presentations. I mean, we used it for a presentation for our applications. You have all these different phone types and tablets and desktop and even paper if you want to design a document for paper. So they're really, really helpful in getting those. But we're just going to do a phone one. And I'm going to say 11 Pro here, just because that's a good device. And this is a frame. And frames are really cool because they're a lot like other layers. You can go through the fill here and change their background if you want to. You can change their opacity. You can change their blending mode. They can have strokes. They can have effects. You can round the corners if you want to. They're very versatile. They're just a little different because they act as these kind of like visual folders. And you see them on the left here as the top level of interaction. Although you guys have already worked with some frames before, because every single component you make and every single auto layout you make is just a special kind of frame. So you're already familiar with frames a little bit in one of their kind of more advanced applications. So kudos to you for that. But today we're going to be looking at an app that I'm developing. I did some user research and I found that there was an unmet need for an app that transitions a square between two different states. And that's what we're going to be working on together today. It's going to be a lot of fun. So let's get started with prototyping. If you're on the YouTube watching me, Zoom does this thing where I'm in the corner above the prototyping. So it's probably going to be right about here on the YouTube frame. But we're going to go click on this prototype button in the top right. It's right underneath this blue share button. And a couple things change already. One of them being this little blue triangle square thing here. This just notifies you which frame we're going to start on. Transitions and prototyping in Figma is inherently between two different frames. So you can't transition from like a rectangle to a frame or from a rectangle to a rectangle. You always have to have a frame, and that's the starting point that you're transitioning from. Another cool thing is if I start hovering over any of these objects, you'll see it outlines them, and I get this little blue dot here. And when I hover over that blue dot, I get the plus. Intuitively, if you click and drag, you can actually link up two different frames. That is the fundamental thing we're going to be doing in all different flavors today. We're just going to be linking up frames. So what this would say, if I look at this interaction details on the right that pops up automatically, on a click, it's going to navigate to the second screen with an instant animation. So when I click this square, it's going to navigate here with an instant animation. Let's actually take a look at what that might look like. I'm going to go press play here in the top right next to that share button. It's going to take a moment just to load on up. You can see when I hover over this, I click on it, and it turns to the right. Now, the issue is if I click on it again, it isn't going to do anything. So let's go back to our thing here, and we will prototype that back up. Remember, you always want to save the back state. And I don't need to load it up again. I can go right back to this one, and you can see I have a pretty cool transition here. Now, again, it's a little jarring to have that happen instantly. So what I want to do here is I'm going to change it to dissolve, just because I want it to be a little bit smoother. And if I take a look at what that looks like, okay. Oh, and the other one was on instant, so let's make sure we change this one as well. I'm going to dissolve there. All right, that looks okay. That's a little bit better. But what I really want is like a rotate function, right? And if I look here on this option of how I'm going to do it, I don't see anything that says rotate. That's because having an option for like every single thing you can do, every single parameter you can change might get a little taxing, and it would be difficult to program in. So instead, Figma made this smart animate feature, and it is fantastic. I cannot sing the praises of smart animate loudly enough, because what it does is it takes the parameters of one object and it looks at that object in the next frame. It does it based on the name of that object, and it'll automatically transition every single parameter between those two different objects. And the basic example, of course, is again, if I go over here, it rotates. It actually, makes that change for me. But you can do so many other things with this. If I, change the location of these, and then I click on this, see how it rotates and it moves. If I change the color of them, maybe this one I want to be red, and I want this one to be blue, and maybe this one is going to have a drop shadow as well. We'll make it like a kind of weird drop shadow. You can see as I go between these guys, it transitions those two, and that is fantastic. If you have different elements that change maybe their size, or maybe some of them go out of the frame or come into the frame, that is fantastic for just letting Figma handle all those interactions. One kind of thing that Figma does not do is, separate interaction timing for different elements. That's something where, if you want something to, maybe I want this rectangle to go down, and then I want to have some text come in from the side after that. That's something that I'd have to do with something like Framer or Principle or one of those apps. But honestly, I've never had that much of an issue with this. So you can probably get around that. But I'm like, look at this. Even that's a little bit fun. So that's basic prototyping. Another really cool thing you can do is these different interaction types. So again, if I click on one of these, you can see that right now on click, it's navigating the second screen. What if I select on drag? What if I want this interaction to be slightly different? Let's see what that looks like. I'm gonna click on that to go back. And if I drag on this now, it's actually doing that animation progression with that mouse state, which is really cool. So if I move up and down, I'm just holding down on it right now. And if I let go, it'll continue the rest of it. And again, I can click, make it go. So this is really good if you're doing sliders. And again, we're just transitioning between two frames. So for example, let's say I wanted to, let's move this over and I want it to get bigger, for example. And maybe on the second screen, I want the background to be like a darker background because I think that'd be cool. So if we go to the prototyping demo again now, see how it affects items that aren't even in the square. It can affect that entire frame. So I don't know if you guys have ever worked with animation or keyframes, but we're basically making keyframes here. We're making our first keyframe there and then our second keyframe there, which is really, really, really powerful. Most animations can be done this way in Figma. and it is just super powerful. And you can see here it says on drag. Sometimes you get this on drag when you don't mean to, and that's if you have something that has this click already taken. And so if you get this too, or you get the on drag and you want the click, make sure you click on that object that you're looking at, and you might need to get rid of one or both of those interactions. We might run into that later because I was practicing this for the demo. And I don't know if I got rid of all of them at the same time. You can also, oh my gosh, there's just so much. So for this guy, if you want to change where it goes, you can just click on it and drag it somewhere else. It is really powerful. But let's say we want to make this on click here. I need to move the little zoom window there. So we're going to make this on click, and I want to, let's see, let's change the easing. So again, this kind of gets into the more animation side of things, but easing is just how quickly it gets from point A to point B. The easiest ease is linear. So if you do linear, you can see the little line there is straight. And here, we will just demo with these guys. So if I click on this, you can see the motion there, it just goes straight over, and that's a little too quick. So let's make it, I'm gonna make it 1,000 milliseconds, which is also just 1 second. So if I click on this, you can see it starts kind of abruptly, and then it ends kind of abruptly. It has one speed the entire time. The thing with motion is that in the real world, nothing just starts moving out of nowhere, and it doesn't just stop moving out of nowhere either. So we need to make it a little bit more realistic. If I choose instead ease in and ease out, and I click on this guy, you can see how it kind of cushions it on either side, so it doesn't start and stop so abruptly. It might be hard to tell over Zoom, so you might want to do this yourself just for practice, but it's a really good way to do that. You can also do custom easing, which is a lot of fun. So if I drag this all the way over here and I drag this all the way over here, you can get this really like intense one. So you can see it starts and it goes like, it kind of gradually goes up and then it goes really quick towards the end. You can even do stuff like overshooting. So if you want it to like bounce, you can click on here, and if you change this to go out, it's going to go past where you want it to go and then come back. So check this out. See how it kind of like bounces back there. So you can do so many different effects with this. Again, that one's a little bit more advanced. I don't use this too terribly often, but it's good to be able to know what it is if you do need to. I think for the most part, you're going to be using ease in and out, or if you have something that's off screen coming on screen, you're going to use ease for that. So that is prototyping fundamentals in terms of animations and stuff. But we want to do a little bit more with this. So I'm going to show you components, and component animations are still in beta, but Figma says anybody can join them. I haven't had any issues with them, but they say that it could affect stability, so watch out. But this is the problem that component states are trying to solve. Before, you would have to make every single permutation of your UI if you had multiple, and this is even just toggles. So for this, if you click on just the onion, it brings you to this state where the onion is checked. And then from there, if I click on tomato, then it's going to bring me to one where the tomato is. But if I click on pickle, then I'll want the one that has just onion and pickle. So I need to grab that down. That is such a mess. Instead, we just want every single one of these to be able to click on and off with one piece of work that we've done. And you could see how this would work with what we talked about last time with different component variants and component states. So they kind of merge the two together. And we're going to talk about 3 different examples that can help us with it. And the first of these is the toggle. Let me actually bring down my play button here, so we can take a look at this toggle. So this toggle has 4 different states and lots of different animation. You can tell, why do you need that many for a toggle? Let me show you, because this is the most premium toggle you ever did see in your entire life. So if you click, it does a toggle. That's normal. That makes sense. I bet you guys could do this now. But what I'm going to show you that's really interesting is if you hold it, maybe you're not so sure, it kind of does this little slide over thing. I don't know about you guys, but that makes me very happy. When I see stuff like this, it kind of fills me with joy. And you can do it in any order you want. There's no set standard that you need to do. It's not a linear flow. So let's go back to QBits here, and I'll show you. how I set this up. And we're going to do this all together, which is really fun. So let's get started. We're just going to make a rectangle. You guys know how to do that. We're going to round those corners almost all the way. We are going to use another rectangle on the inside. And the reason for that is when we go into this pill shape, I don't want it to distort like a circle. It would turn into an oval. I want it to stay in that rectangle. So I'm just going to copy and paste into this one until that looks good. And then I'm going to take the height here and I'm going to change the width to that height value. So I'm just going to change 57, 57. And look at that. It almost looks like a circle if you weren't paying attention. So we're going to go here. I'm going to make it white. And then that is, oh, I need to add a little drop shadow because of course you do. Let's add a little blur because I'm obsessive. Okay, cool. That's our first state. That was pretty easy. Let's go down to this next one here. And I find it a little bit easier just to do the on next. So we're going to do that. I'm just going to move this over to the right and change this background to a kind of a green color here. So a little too green. Maybe that works. That looks good. And then for these middle states here, I'm just going to duplicate this one again, holding Option and Shift. And I'm going to move this out a little bit. And you can see here, I'll just give you a quick little demo. If I had a circle and I tried to do that, I get this oval kind of thing. And that's not what we want. We want that pill shape there. So that's good. And then same thing, I'm just going to drag this guy down. I'm going to move it to the other side. And the way that I would normally do this is I just have a gradient set up from this color to this color. And so what you can do is, I'll show you how I do that. So the gray, I'm just going to get from here, and the green, I'm just going to get from here. And so along this axis is the kind of blending of that. So I'm going to take this background, I'm going to make it like that green. I'm going to take this background, I'm going to make it like that green. And now it's kind of like the transition between the two of them. They might look the same. I don't know. Maybe they are, but I don't know. It makes me feel a little bit better, at least just to get. So these are our different states. And you guys, I think, could do this already. So we're going to do, we're going to make a component. We're going to make a component. We're going to make a component here. I'm going to change the name of this component to off. And this one is going to be off to, oh, I need to type first. Off to on. This one's going to be called on. And then this one's going to be on to off. And that just helps us when we select all these guys and say combine as variants. Now, when we go, I'm going to say toggle for real to differentiate it from my toggle demo over there. So now when I go into property one, it just has all of them named, so I know which one they are. So I'm going to call that state. And this is where we would have left off last time. But this time, we're going to go into prototyping. So check this out. And this, I need to preface this. This is only if you're signed up for the beta here. And you can find that just by Googling component switching beta. But if I say prototype here, and I drag from one to the other, you can see it has this change to function. This is new. Before, this would have had to be navigate to, but we're going to change to, which is really cool. So on this one, what I want to do when I change to that one, I want it to be on, I think it is while pressing. And then for this one, same thing. While we're pressing down on it, we want it to change to this thing. However, if we just click, we want it to be able to go to this one. So let's do that. Unclick, change to state on. And then same thing here, unclick, change to state off. And we'll give that a shot. Let's bring in an instance of this asset. Bring that guy in there, and we'll change the play button to him. And let's give that a shot just to see what it's like already. So if I press down, it does that. And if I let go, oh, that's not working. So this happens a lot when you're doing these kind of prototyping. And that's why I have this demo here, so you can see the different options. So we're going to do on click, change to that one, state off, and then for this one, we can see that it's just hooked up to this guy, and that is on click, change to that one. And for this one, it is drag and click. Okay. And so there's a couple different interactions you want for each of these. So we're going to make it so that this one goes here after you let go. We're going to say mouse up on that, and then that should bring us to that one. Let's see how that works. And there's a lot of troubleshooting you can do with that. So mouse up. Okay, now I've moved it over. And then same thing here. If I click down, I can move it over. But it's not doing that animate. And that was like a huge thing we wanted to do. And that's because the layers here are named differently. If we go to our layers, again, this does everything based on layer name. You can see on the left here, these each have a different layer name. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to retitle all of these circle, even though technically that one's a full shape. And what's really nice about Figma that I haven't really seen in other ones is as you hover over them and you have like different frames, it'll actually show you what it's expecting to move to if you have them prototyped up. We can do all these are called circle, and then I'm just going to call this BG. We're going to do that for this one and then that one. Hopefully this gives you like a little bit of an insight on how to troubleshoot these kinds of things, because they do pop up and it can be frustrating. So now that we've done that, let's give it another shot. Oh, look at that. It's moving between the two of them now. Perfect. So we can change this more even. I probably would want to make it a little bit quicker than it is right now, because it's got to be the slowest toggle you've ever seen. But at least that kind of gets across what we're trying to do here and making the toggle button. So the next thing we're going to do is a little button demo. And this one is a little bit more straightforward. I'm just going to make a little kind of like HTML 2.0 button. You've probably seen lots of them on the web before. And I'm going to make this design a little bit lighter. And this one a little bit darker. We can scale that text up using our K-scale tool. We can go down here and I'll just design it like this. So we got our different button states. This is going to be the hover when you hover on it. And let's make it a little bit more colorful. We're going to make it kind of this red color. Again, we want to have that kind of shadow on the bottom. And then we're going to do a mouse down. And we're going to make the colors here a little different. Another really cool thing about Figma is if you select a couple different items, you can see all the selection colors on the right here and edit them without actually having to select that specific item, which is really, really nice. So I have these different component states now. So let's group these up. And I'm going to make them components. I'm going to combine them as variants. And again, I'm going to do the same thing where I rename these to be the same name. So let's do top on all these guys. And then we're going to do bottom on all the other ones on the bottom. And what we're going to get from this is a button that responds to a hover and it responds to a click, which is really slick. And of course, it can also change where you go in that. So we have all of our button and layers named nicely. Let's go ahead and name this button for real, just so I know which one it is, so that when we go into assets here, we can move this guy on over and we can prototype from him. Let's get into the prototyping. So the first thing I want to do is when I hover on this button, I want it to change to this button. Actually, let's make these text items a little light. There we go. So when I hover on this button, I want it to go to this button. So I'm going to change this from on click to while hovering. And then from this one, I want it to be from, let's see, while pressing. I want it to go down to this button. Let's give that a shot. Let's see what that looks like. So while I'm hovering, it kind of goes up. And then when I click, it goes down. But again, we're running into a little bit of an issue because the height of these two buttons is different from this button. So the way you want to fix that is go into this little frame section here and get that first button. So the height there is 105. I'm just going to copy this. I'm going to go to this one and do 105. We're going to do this one and 105. It's scaling. So if that happens, you can go over here to where it says constraints, and we're just going to do top and left, and same thing for all of these guys. And And the reason that's in there is because what we're doing is kind of a little different than what most people will want to do when they're doing this, but it is important nonetheless to be able to do. So that's why Figma has the option. And now when we change it to height 105, see how it kind of moves that. And so if we go to the prototype now, let's actually, I'm going to do it. I'm going to make it its own frame just so that it stays still, because otherwise it'll get cut off. You can see when I put a frame around this button, which was the previous frame, it actually overtakes that prototyping mode, which is really nice. So if I click on this now, when I hover over it, it goes to that button. And when I click on it, it goes down. So you can see how you'd use that for any kind of button on your display. It's a really nice feature to be able to use. So last thing we're going to do is a hover card. We're going to use this card that Varun made for us last time. Let's go ahead and make this a component. And we're going to make a different variant with this. Let's make that. Let's make a variant. And this variant is going to be super simple. We're just going to make it expand a little bit. And we're going to make it so that it's a little bit more colorful. I think Varun's favorite color is yellow, I've heard. So let's see what we can do with some yellow. So now it'll expand. Let's actually change the initial state. So let's make all of this text go out a little bit. So it's going to be a little bit less overpowering, and then we'll kind of change this image so it's not there as much. And then for the hover state that we're making, we're going to make the background, let's make the background like this bright yellow here. And let's make this text, it's like bright orange. There we go. And this is PQX design if I've ever seen it. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go into this card and I'm going to say prototype. I'm going to move this down to here. And again, all we want to do is while hovering, we want to go to this one. So let's do kind of the same trick we did last time. We're going to move our prototyping arrow. Oh, where did you go, Mr. Prototyping Arrow? For some reason, it went to the demo that's completely later. We're going to move our prototyping arrow over to this guy. I'm going to make a little frame around him just so that when it moves, it's not jarring. And let's give that a shot. So when we hover over it now, see it moves out. And one of the nice things about that hover animation is that I don't actually have to specify when I unhover. As long as I'm going back to that previous state that I came from, I don't need to make a new one. So there we go. It's really nice. But that's just, I mean, one part of this prototyping thing. What prototyping is normally used for is kind of what I was talking about earlier, where you're going from screen to screen. So let's take a look at a way we can involve components with them. And this is something that pops up a lot in app designs, is you have these different pages that you want to go to, and you have this global navigation down at the bottom. And you want to be able to just tap on one of these from anywhere and go to that next one. And this used to be a big chore. This is going to be a lot easier now. So let's go over to the left here, and you can see my tab bar component that I've made. And you can see I have some different states. So let's click on this one here, and we're going to make the page the shop page. And you can see the little shop pops up. And we're going to make this page the explore page. And we're going to basically set this up so that each one of the pages has the right one. Now what I want to do is from this shop page, I want to be able to tap any one of these guys here and go to any one of these guys here. So I'm going to go into my shop page. I'm going to double click until I get to this explore thing here. And when I prototype, I'm going to move this explore over to here. So now when I'm on the shop page and I tap on the explore button, I'm just going to do instant for now. I'm going to instantly be taken to this explore page. Let's move our little thing, which really likes going down here for some reason. I will move this over to the shop page just so that we can see what that looks like. Let's give that a shot. Here, press play. And, oh, that's good. When I hover over explore, I can click on it, and there I am. I'm going to explore. Fantastic. But some of you might have noticed we have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. We have 4 per. That's 20 whole, items. That's a lot of work. I don't want to do all those. And so Secretly, I actually have what's called an atom component. And what this does is it actually is all of these atoms. All I did was, or all of these tab bars, all I did is I moved this tab bar out. So I have a child tab bar basically, and I pressed component again, and I made it its own component. And then I made components off that one. The benefit of doing that is, check this out. Maybe I want on every single one of these screens, I want the fill of this heart to be red. So I'm going to click on that. And now if I choose just on this one, it affects all of these guys. That is so important, because what I don't have to do now is go to each and every one of these and make that one tab bar interaction. I can just use this one to do that. So now if I click on shop, I'm going to go to prototype and move this over to the shop one. If I click, and did you see all the different ones from down here? See how it automatically did all those? Does that make you as happy as it makes me? Because this is saving you so much time. And again, so much consistency. I had projects before. I mean, look at that. Look at all these lines I drew in like a couple seconds. And now if I press play, I can go between any one of these. And that's super easy. That's almost insultingly easy, but I'll take it. Let's focus on this one a little bit more. So I'm going to take this this kind of outline off, because I want to show you something else that's really cool. So Figma knows that you're not making these designs in a vacuum. And let's actually, I can't select this background, and that's okay. I'll just make a little square behind it so that you can see what we're working on here. Figma knows that you aren't designing this in a vacuum. So if I were to present a customer with something that looks like this, I mean, they might get the idea, you know, but they've done a really good job. If you just have prototype selected and no items selected, you can see over here, you can change the background. So, you know, maybe I want it to be red for whatever reason. Okay, now it's red. I usually stick to black for my backgrounds though. But you can see this really nice device area here, and they have different devices. They have presentation sizes. They have watches. What I'm interested in is the 11 Pro Max, and they even give you the ability to change the color of it, which is really nice. You can change between landscape and portrait. And if I go back to this prototyping demo now, you can see I have this physical device here, and I even get like a little finger on top of it. I mean, it doesn't get much better than this. This is really nice. And you can record this and use this in vision videos. You can do a lot of different really cool things with this using built-in utilities. So that's really nice. Those are kind of the options you have over here on the side. And of course, you can choose a starting frame from here. I just have very many of them. So we didn't want to do it that way. Another thing, like I mentioned, is that you can use these for presentations. So this is an actual presentation that I worked on this quarter. And if we move our starting frame, oh my gosh, if we move our starting frame over to these guys, I'll give you a little bit of that presentation. So let's move that over. If we press start here, oh, it's a little wonky because I have that device selected. So let's actually move this over to presentation. And now when I press play, there we go. So all these animations were done in Figma. So I had I think about 39% of labor force, or something or the other. 73% of them don't graduate college, and you can see the difference between the two is 34%. That was a nice little animation. Another thing you can do if we go down to the second side here is, again, this is all done with Figma interactions. So if I click on this, it moves over to the side and say, Wi-Fi isn't that accurate. It actually gives you a general area. It doesn't give you a specific area. SLAM is another technology you can use, but not that kind of SLAM. This kind of SLAM, where you use your phone. It's simultaneous location and mapping, where you use your phone's camera and you map out a different area. So those are different animations that you can use. And this is all done with auto-animate. Literally all of this is done with auto-animate. I just have different keyframes between those. And you can see those over here where it goes to the big dude. And see how when I hover over this Wi-Fi, see how the Wi-Fi over here outlines in blue? That tells you, oh, I recognize these two items are the same name on these two different frames. And so it's really helpful for figuring out where things are going to go. Something else is that if you look on the left one underneath the guy's feet over here, you can see I have another item that's over there. And that's on purpose. That's because in order for this to grow like it did, it needs to come from something. And if you've ever worked with keyframes, again, you kind of get the idea here. But if I go to layers here and I look at ellipse, you can see it's just this ellipse. I just made it smaller and I made the opacity 0. And you do that all the time with these kinds of things. This little purple one here, if you look at the purple one, there's a little purple guy. If I highlight, the little purple guy is right there. And so you can see it as it grows from that state up to the next one. What I'll usually do is I'll just design what I want them to look like. And then what I'll do is afterwards, I'll like duplicate this and bring it over and then shrink it and then make it that 0% opacity. But it's a really slick way to be able to do interactions in your own presentations. The last thing I'm going to talk about for these guys before we go on to the next one is if you want to do something off the frame and you want it to come onto the frame. So let's say between shop and explore, let's make this interaction a little bit better. So we're gonna go from prototype and I'm gonna make it so if you just click on it, it just brings you to explore. And that's just for our demo here. Let's see if I go to smart animate, so I can smart animate between them. And maybe I want shop to go off the screen and I want to explore to come in from off the screen. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to, of course, bring shop onto this page. Oh, I'm going to bring shop onto this page, and then I'm going to move shop off the screen so that, oh no, I can't move shop off the screen because as soon as I move it off the screen, it goes out of that frame. I guess we can't do this. Just kidding. So there's a couple of different ways to combat that. If you want to, you can press shift and the left arrow, and it won't do that because your cursor isn't over the side. But probably the easiest way to do this, and I literally did not know this until like a couple of days ago, and I'm kind of embarrassed. But if you have the item and you hold down shift, you get it constrained. And if you hold down space after all of that, it won't do that, which is really nice. So I'll demo that again for Explore. I'm going to copy and paste this onto the shop page. I have this Explore item. So if I hold shift and I hold space, even though my cursor is going off that screen, it won't take it out of that frame, which is very important. Let's draw one from there to there. And now, this is also, you remember I said before it said on drag? I saw this on drag and my spidey sense started tingling. So what happened is this had a latent thing where it wanted click to go somewhere. So we need to get rid of both of these and then do it again. And then now it'll start with click. Same thing here. If we go to the shop one, instead of on drag, we're going to rid of this click one and then change this to on click. So now if I demo this one, again, I'm going to move this, this starting page over to shop. Now if I demo this, I didn't actually practice this, so we'll see if it works. If I click there, look at that. It goes between the two of them, and it's coming in from off screen. It's kind of neat. Okay, the last thing I'm going to talk about, because I know it's 5:47, we've covered a lot today, is this concept of overlays. And sometimes you have something you want to put on top of another screen. For example, if I click on this go to checkout sign, I want this to go on top of this my cart screen and kind of animate in that way. And you can do this a couple different ways. One way to do it is to, actually just physically put it on top there. And maybe we want this to, have this rectangle in the background behind that checkout. But then you get issues with layering, and you don't want to dim everything. You just want to dim some of the stuff, and so you go like this. But you put this over too soon, and so you put this back over. It's a mess. It's honestly a mess. Nobody wants to do that. So Figma has a really neat way to do this, and you guessed it. We're just going to go into prototype, and I'm actually going to change this back to the phone. So when we come back, we can see it in all its glory. We're going to go to this My Cart page, and we're going to say, when I click on this Go to Checkout, I want this guy to come in from the bottom. So on tap of this button, I want it to open an overlay. Okay, and you'll see this little item on here, which is an open overlay. I want it to be in the bottom center, and I'm actually going to add a background behind that overlay. And let's have it move in from the bottom. We'll have it do it over a second, sure. So if I change my thing to this for this kind of last demo here, I'm going to change it back to this dude. We're going to start there. And when I click on go to checkout, look at that. It just pops up. I didn't do this background at all. All I told it is I want this little component to be there. That is really nice. Like we'll do another one right now. I'm just going to freestyle. So we're going to have this really bad thing here, and I'm going to type the text, "Are you sure?" So let's move this over here, and this is going to be another overlay that I do. Let's make this a frame. Because again, we can only do interactions between frames. And let's just say when I click on this plus button right here, I want that to open that "Are you sure?" dialog. Instead, I'm going to do this open overlay. I want it centered. And do you see how it was smart enough to say, that one isn't as wide as the other one. I want to center it. We're going to add a background. Instead of moving in, we're just going to dissolve it. So let's give that a shot. Oh, I need to restart. There we go. So now when I move in here, if I click this guy, you can see it gives me this little vague dialogue. And this is really good if you want to add like a dialogue box, like, on iOS, it's like, "Are you sure you want to share your location?" or something like that. That's how you get these dialogues on Figma. And then let's say we want this little X here to, oh, I already did. Okay, well, if you drag on this X, what's really nice is any one of these, if you click and drag on the top right, you get these two quick links to close the overlay or to go back. So if I click on this X and just drag it to this top here, that's to close the overlay. Maybe I want this place order to go over here. So now I can have a little prototyping. So if I want to go to checkout, it brings that guy up. Just kidding, I don't want to do it. Or maybe I go to checkout and see how it just does the reverse of the interaction that it had before. I didn't need to program that in. Or if I place that order, now it'll bring me to this "Your order has been accepted" screen. So that's overlays. You can also do it, we don't have time to do it right now, but if your order fails, you can bring in this guy and like maybe if you pressed place order and something didn't work, you can bring this guy up. So you can see all the different applications for overlays. The last thing to talk about is the community, because I would be remiss not to. This is an app design that we got from the community and edited just a little tiny bit to make sure all the spelling errors were gone and kind of update it. Like you might have noticed the promo code here is UX King and the total cost is $19.78 and stuff like that. So, those are little things that we did to this. But for the most part, Aparna and I, when we were making this, we didn't have to design anything because we had this great example available already on the community. So definitely like check that out, see how other people are using these things and what kind of solutions they use, because they are a lot of fun and they're generally well done. So that is what I have to share with you guys today on prototyping. I'd want to save this last little bit though for questions that you guys have for me. So what questions do you have? Do you want me to demo anything again? Am I just really good at teaching and everything was super clear and you don't have anything? I see some nods. These are dorks. Appreciate it. The last thing I'm going to talk about then, if nobody has any questions, is this, which if I click on it here, I'm going to stop sharing real quick. I just want to make sure this link works. And it does. Cool. So this is a bittersweet moment for me because it is the last qubits of the quarter. Please save your tears. This is the last qubits of the quarter, but we're looking towards things we can do later on, other topics you guys want us to cover. And so if you have the time, I know this is a busy time of year, I did put together a little Google form, if you don't mind filling it out for me, just based on what you learned. If you have any questions for me, or if you have anything else you want me to cover in the future, ideas for different things you'd like to learn, As an example, we're looking at one completely on different plugins, and I'll go through like 3 or 4 plugins that I find essential to Figma, or how to design your final deliverables in Adobe Dimensions, so you don't need to worry about other people giving you these mock-ups or prototypes or stuff. You can just have them and design your own things. So there's other things we wanted to cover. We decided to do these 3 because they're probably the 3 most essential ones, and we wanted to have kind of this backlog on YouTube. But if you guys do have the time, I'd really appreciate if you went through the form. It should take, I'm going to guess, 3 minutes and 47 seconds. So if that's too long, don't worry about it. But if you have the time, I really would appreciate it. And with that, all of these are going to be on YouTube. They are timestamped. I don't know if anybody's been there before, but they're timestamped. So if you're just like, oh gosh, I can't remember, what was that overlay thing? I remember it was at the end, but I don't remember when, and I don't want to scrub through it. They're all timestamped, so you can just click on the link that says overlay, and it'll take you right there. We figured that's a little bit better for this kind of like replay experience. But other than that, thank you everyone from the bottom of my heart for coming out here. This is the first time I've done software instruction over Zoom, and I really appreciate all the feedback and everyone for showing up. And thank you guys so very much. We'll see you guys later. Bye.